What an extraordinary man, Gino Strada, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Gino, for your input. Extraordinary journey as well. That was, I think, our third peace talk. We have 5 of them. And guess what? One of them is with Jude Law. I won't tell you which one, but it's coming up very soon. You can watch the full interview with Gino Strada on Peace One Day's YouTube page. And
we're now going to watch the Gino. That's it, just say introducing Gino. Go Ahmed.
Sorry about that. Just going over this script here. And don't forget to comment on our Facebook page and share this with your friends. That was a fantastic peace talk. Our next program, which will be coming up shortly, is on the corporate coalition with Richard Reed, co-founder of Innocent Drinks, and Jochen Zeitz, former CEO of Puma. Remember, we've talked today about Peace Day and the UN. We've talked about the power of the individual. We've heard people talk about coalitions, grassroots activism with Rotary and UNA UK. And now we're going to talk about and hear from the corporations, the coalition of corporations, which plays a very crucial role in supporting the good work of NGOs and indeed international organizations. As always, don't forget, this is the day to reach out and say you're sorry.
Introduce Gino for me, please. The film with Gino.
And I would like to introduce the film with Gino Strada, ladies and gentlemen, who is the trauma surgeon and founder of Emergency, a remarkable man who provides free healthcare. He builds hospitals, trains doctors, and provides healthcare to victims of war and landmines. Gino Strada.
Well, I am a surgeon, and I am the founder of the humanitarian organization Emergency, which is an Italian-based organization. Now we are trying to expand abroad. The organization is basically dealing with victims of war and poverty. We had a long history, about 22 years, of treating war wounded. And then we expanded to include war victims, which is a much broader concept. A woman who cannot have a safe pregnancy because the war has destroyed everything, or a child who cannot be cured for very easy, stupid, preventable diseases, has to be considered a war victim as well. I think that it was our extensive practice in different countries for 22 years that reached over 7 million people that we have treated, that eventually produced this Right Livelihood award that was given to me, but mostly to the organization as a recognition of the great work they've done. Well, my number one concern is that it looks like the humanity is not going into the right direction, because violence has become the main way to interact among people. And violence is basically the common denominator of those who are waging wars or those who commit terrorist acts. The idea that we live in a community should be much, much stronger, and education is a good part of allowing this consciousness to become very common among the general public. If we decide to live associated, what's the sense of killing each other? Every species who kills their kids is obviously going to get extinguished. So what's the point in solving problems through violence? We have other means, dialogue, talking, understanding each other, also compromising. But when the option of violence is open, it is quite unavoidable that we will go into that direction. I think we must seriously think of not using violence as a precondition to establish good human relations of mutual solidarity. Well, I think it's quite difficult to answer, particularly in this time where you see that the world is definitely going into the opposite direction. But you know, in history, things never went as we predicted. So, although it is against the odds, or it looks like, probably is the right time now to understand that a change is possible, because all the difficulties that we are experiencing, they slowly will convince us that it's the time for a change in history. And the major change in history, in my opinion, should be to start abolishing armed conflicts and wars, and the use of mass violence, of course. Well, I think that this is absolutely the crucial element. We cannot continue with the few intellectuals and scientists who are against war, against nuclear weapons. Citizens should be involved, because if we can convince millions of people to put pressure on their governments not to wage wars, that would be much more important than all the treaties and discussions and conferences that took place. So I think that eventually the citizens' involvement, the general public involvement, is the most important factor in this, and everybody can contribute, starting by saying, I am against this. I don't want to exercise violence against anybody, and I don't want other people to exercise violence. Well, you know, sometimes you don't see the benefits the day after, but you have planted a seed. And if you plant a seed, particularly with youngsters and at school level, I'm quite convinced that some of those seeds will grow up to be a big tree, and eventually could be very fruitful for the peace process. Well, it's try to recover and retrieve your memory and the memory of your family members about the real meaning of war and the real meaning of violence. Because people who have not seen wars, who have not been listening to the stories of the victims, are not prone to understand. You have to be exposed to these problems, and then you will probably realize that a sense of peaceful world, a sense that you know, living in peace and living without violence is much better for everyone, is much better for the environment, is much better for the future generations. Because we have to pass a message to the future generations, and the message cannot be egoistic, just think about yourself, don't get involved with problems who are around you. The consciousness that we are all living in the same world and is up to each and every one of us to contribute to this is probably the best message that we can pass. I'm convinced that education is one of the most important tools. Today, memories are so many that it's difficult to pick up one, because as a surgeon I operated several thousands of victims of war. But what disturbed me the most at the beginning was to see children maimed by toy mines. Mines that they look like toys, and of course a child would pick them up, an adult will not. And so I asked myself, why? Why are armies or fighters scattering this kind of deadly toys in a country? Because maiming a population is much more costly for the enemy than killing them. And that's why these mines have been designed not to kill, but to create disabled. And create an army of disabled children in a country, for me, is one of the most horrible crimes you can imagine. So that, I think, was and is still always present in my mind every time I go to a war zone to do surgery. Yeah, that keeps me going. Knowing that you cannot change the world, but you can change the world of that particular person you have met 1 week before or 1 month before. Changing the world is, I think, a molecular process. It's not something that will happen overnight. But if many people keep going in trying to save lives, to improve the quality of lives, that will make a difference.
What an extraordinary man, ladies and gentlemen, Gino Strada. An extraordinary journey, extraordinary career, the things he does. You can watch that full interview with Gino Strada on the Peace One Day YouTube channel. And don't forget to comment on this Facebook page and also share it with your friends. Watch, comment, share. Our next program, which will be coming out very, very shortly, will be on the corporate coalition. Corporations play a very important role in supporting the work of NGOs and international organizations. More about that later. This program, the next one, will be actually program 10 of the day. Can't believe we've been with you for nearly 7-8 hours now. All these programs, by the way, are stored on our Facebook page. The guests in the corporate coalition are Richard Reed, the co-founder of Innocent Drinks, and Jochen Zeitz, the former CEO of Puma. So I look forward to hearing from Richard and Jochen. And as always, don't forget, this is the day to make peace. Reach out to your neighbor and say you're sorry, if you need to. There is still plenty of time to make peace today and every day. From all of us here at Peace One Day, thank you for watching. We'll be back very, very soon. Thank you.